Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? Edgeman Synergy coming to you guys today with another deck tech. So today we are looking at a updated list for Blue-White Delver. Now, this is post-Avacyn Restored, and you guys may be wondering, well, what Avacyn Restored cards did you add to this? And the answer is actually none of them. There weren't really any great options for Delver as far as Blue-White goes that I could add into this deck, but I still wanted to cover it and show you guys an updated list for it because it's still a really big powerhouse deck in the meta, and it does very well whenever people take it to sanctioned events. But I did tweak around a little bit of stuff from the beginning of the season and from last season of what I ran for Delver. So I'm going to be sharing that with you guys today. The entire list is down below so you guys can take a look at that, as well as sideboard options. But before we actually break down this deck, if you guys have any suggestions for decks that you would like to see, please leave it in the comments below and I'll take it into consideration for future deck techs. So the first thing that we are taking a look at with this deck is the land base here. So as you guys may assume and imagine, Seachrome Coast is going to be a playset for this deck, giving us blue and white. So we have our playset here. We also have a playset of Glacial Fortress, so as well, giving us blue and white for the deck. Next we have Moorland Haunt. So this is going to be a 3 of, and I think this still remained the same from last season and how I ran Delver, if not added one more Moorland Haunt from 2 to 3. But Moorland Haunt is definitely really awesome, lets you synergize with destroyed creatures earlier in the game, and gives you some 1/1 flyers. Next we have a single plains for the basics and 9 islands. So I kind of mixed it up with the artworks that I chose for this deck. So I had 4 of this artwork, 1 of this artwork, and another 4 for this one. So 9 total islands. And believe me, if I had any of the unhinged / unglued ones, I would be running them in this deck. But unfortunately I don't. So I have to stick to the Zendikar ones. Now we are taking a look at the rest of the cards in the deck. So we have Delver of Secrets, and this is going to be a playset. So if I can just grab a hold of these. So playset of Delver. Straighten that out. There we go. Playset of Gitaxian Traft, as opposed to just 3 of them. You really want to see this guy in your opening hand and just be able to play him on turn 3, because if your opponent can't deal with it, it's pretty much going to be game over if they can't get rid of him or block him each turn. Just because he's going to be swinging in a sense for 6 with the 4/4 that you create whenever he attacks. But he's just a powerhouse. He's so good in this deck. So playset of the Geist. Playset of Snapcaster Mage as well. So this is going to give us pretty much a double of every instant and sorcery that we have in this deck. It's going to let us reoccur stuff. And also he provides a body for swinging in. So playset of Snapcaster. Then we have Invisible Stalker. So this is going to be a 2 of, and I have my 4/1s here. But he is a 1/1 for 2. And he has hexproof and unblockable. So if you can throw on some equipment onto him, he becomes pretty powerful. And your opponent's going to have to use a Wrath to get rid of him. Or a sack ability, but Wrath is oftentimes what happens. But next we have Sword of War and Peace. So this is going to be a 2 of. Very awesome if you can attach it to a Geist of Saint Traft or an Invisible Stalker, also Delver if he's flipped. Pretty much anything if you can attach it to and swing in and get some damage in and activate the Sword of War and Peace, then you're pretty set for being able to win the game a lot easier. Next we have Sword of Feast and Famine. So this is actually a singleton, and this was actually a replacement for Runechanter's Pike. In playtesting, I decided to actually switch it from 2 Runechanter's Pikes to 1/1 for the Pike and the Feast and Famine, just because the red-green matchups are becoming a lot more prominent in my meta, so I decided to put this in for protection from green. It's really awesome, gives you protection from stuff like Strangleroot, Geist, and at the same time, if you're able to get in damage and activate the Feast and Famine, you untap all of your lands, which could possibly give you mana to mana leak stuff, Vapor Snag it away, or in a whole, just give you more options during the turn, which is always awesome. Possibly even re-equip the sword onto another creature and give it protection. So Feast and Famine became really relevant, and I really liked running it as just a one-of. And then we have the Runechanter's Pike as a one-of, because we run a lot of instants and sorceries, and we can give a creature first strike and a buff equal to the number of instants and sorceries in our grave. So Runechanter's Pike is always awesome. Next we have Ponder, and the Ponder that everybody likes, my altered Pokeball Ponder. And then we have 3 regular ones, which are a little bit lackluster, but a playset of Ponder, as you guys can imagine, sets up your Delver to be able to flip, and also lets you plan out your next 2 turns, because you draw one after you rearrange the top 3. Next we have Gitaxian Probe. So the thing I like most about this card is you get to look at your opponent's hand. You also get to take notes for that current game, which a lot of people seem to not know about. You are allowed to write down what your opponent has in their hand and mark off as they play it. So that becomes a really awesome thing about Gitaxian Probe. You also draw a card off of it, and you can pay the Phyrexian mana to cast it by just using your life and paying 2 life for it instead. So Gitaxian Probe is awesome. Next we have Vapor Snag. So this is going to be a playset as well. Lets you bounce back your opponent's stuff, and makes it a lot less likely that your opponent's going to be able to block with anything or have that Alpha Strike or anything like that. But Vapor Snag is always awesome, and it's just a little bit better than Unsummon, because it makes your opponent lose 1 life. Then we have Mana Leak, and I have another one of my altars here, the Blacked Out Mana Leak, that a lot of people also like. But a playset of Mana Leak, it's still relevant even post-Avacyn Restored with Cavern of Souls in play. Just because if your opponent tries to do multiple things in a turn and they only have 1 Cavern of Souls and they try to get like 2 creatures out, you're going to be able to counter the other one. Also, it's relevant against stuff like Curse of Death's Hold, Planeswalkers, or even if they don't have a Cavern, if they just don't draw one and still plan on playing creatures, Mana Leak is still relevant, and it's very awesome in most matchups. So, playset of the Mana Leak. Next we have Thought Scour. So this is going to be a 2-of, and this synergizes with the Runechanter's Pike. It mills you for 2 and lets you draw a card. And if you're not running, if you're just running the Runechanter's Pike as a 1-of, then more times than none it's going to let you mill your opponent and then let you draw 1. It disrupts anything that your opponent may have set up with their own Ponder, also miracles, stuff like that. So it helps with that, but I actually run 1 Runechanter's Pike in the sideboard, so if I end up siding that other Runechanter's Pike in, then the Thought Scour becomes relevant for me milling myself to build up the Runechanter's Pike. But it depends on the situation. Thought Scour has more uses than just 1, but it also lets you draw a card for 1 blue, which is nice. So 2 of those. We have 1 Dismember, and this was a substitute for the 3rd Gutshot, and it ended up that in certain matchups Gutshot was good, but in certain matchups Dismember was good, and it just ended up that I just want to run 1 main board. Gutshot is really good against Ink Moth and 1-drop creatures, stuff like humans. If they get their Champion of the Parish out, you can just burn him before your opponent is able to build him up, or in response to one of your opponents playing another creature, and then you're just like, oh, well, I'm going to Gutshot it before it gets the counter. Also, Dismember was really good as an option just because it deals with a lot more stuff that Gutshot can't deal with, but at the same time it's a little bit more costly because you're going to be paying with a lot of your life, because 4 life is really, it's pretty hefty, but you're also able to reoccur with Snapcaster and just prevent a lot more damage that could be done with bigger creatures, or you can jump block with a 1/1 that you create off Moorland Haunt. Dismember the creature and just like make a Titan a 1/1 or something like that, and trade off with those. There's a lot of different things that you can do with Dismember, but if the situation presents itself, having Dismember in your hand is really the more favorable thing than just having a Gutshot and not being able to do anything with it, unless it's something like Wolfrun where you want to get rid of that Ink Moth, but still Dismember is equally as relevant. So that about does it for the main board of this deck. If you guys missed anything or didn't catch a card quantity or anything like that, the entire deck list is down below, so you guys can use that as a reference. Also, there are going to be some sideboard suggestions for you guys. I'm not going to provide a sideboard because everybody's meta is different, and you have to deal with different decks, and I can't just give you a list and expect you to do well with it, or you guys can't expect to do well with it either. So there's some suggestions that you guys can make your own calls with. But that about does it for this deck tech. So if you guys enjoyed it, I would really appreciate it if you like, favorite, and subscribe to the channel, and you will be updated on more daily Magic the Gathering content. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and have a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.